everyone, I'm Caro, the Mental Traveler, and today I will be doing a book review about the novel Shadow of the Moon by British author Mary Margaret Kay. It was first published in 1957 and is the first novel that I've read by this author. MMK is best known for the book The Four Pavilions, which I shall be reviewing next week. And the reason why I decided to read this novel is because, as I've said in other videos, I love stories, whether they're in books or movies or TV shows, that deal with British people living in the colonies, whether it's in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. There has never been, unfortunately, an adaptation for Shadow of the Moon. So this was quite a new reading experience for me because I usually prefer to watch something and then read about it. So I had no idea what I was gonna find in this book. Still, I hope someone one day remedies this situation because the story is extraordinary. It's epic and outstanding and has tons of great material for TV. From romance and historical fiction to politics and war and bloodshed. Finally, this will be a video without spoilers, so enjoy. This is the story of Winter de Ballesteros, a beautiful young woman from British and Spanish descent who is born in India. We learn quite about her parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents before we are introduced to her in the story. Despite being born in India, once Winter is born, she is orphaned at a very young age, so she is sent back to live in England with her rich relatives, where unfortunately nobody seems to like her except her great-grandfather, who, being quite old, promises a 12-year-old Winter's hand in marriage to a man in his late 30s called Conway Barton. So Winter and Conway are sort of promised to each other and expect to get married when Winter is older. Conway goes back to live in India while Winter stays in England, dreaming of the day when she will be Mrs. Conway Barton. But by the time that she's 17, events lead to Conway sending his right-hand man, Captain Alex Randall, a very handsome and intelligent man who doesn't really get along with Conway, to fetch Winter in Great Britain and escort her back to India. And while I don't want to give anything away, I do want to point out that this was a novel that kept on surprising me at every turn of the page. I was certain that Alex and Winter would fall in love right away and things would get complicated between her and Conway because of it, but they do not. This wasn't as that was predictable. And I will only tell you that once Alex and Winter reach India, they find it a country on the verge of an explosion. The Sepoy Rebellion of 1857, also known as India's first war for independence. I was definitely not expecting the amazing journey Winter was going to live through in this novel, and it shocked and pleased me in equal measures. And although this is a romantic historical fiction, I do want to warn the reader that if you're expecting these sort of star-crossed lovers to have an easy journey, you'd be disappointed. But if you're in for a ride that will show you the love story that's not very conventional, but it's splendidly crafted and believable, then go ahead and read it. I personally didn't expect that I would like it so much, but I did. As soon as I was done with it, I read it again. I couldn't help myself. I give Shadow of the Moon a 5 out of 5 stars review because this is just the sort of story that I love. Long, romantic, with main characters that I admire and came to love, set in an exotic setting that sort of serves as a stage for a big important historical event. I learned so much from this book and it surpassed all my expectations. At one point I thought it would have a predictable plot, but it didn't. I wasn't sure how it was going to end, and the events that lead up to the outcome of the plot had me holding my breath in eager anticipation because the climax was so intense. Anything could happen in its aftermath, and the novel is just so well written and so profoundly researched. As I said earlier, I was expecting this sort of cheesy love story similar to a Barbara Cartland book, but it wasn't. It's very romantic, but in an unconventional way, and the author's writing is so subtle that she doesn't even go into that much details into a love scene for you to feel all of these amazing feelings and step right into the place of Winter, the protagonist, as she's being held in the arms of the love of her life. And also I think that it's romantic in the sense that it's poetic. Winter's story and the love she feels and her reflections on the ordeals that she has to go through and the depth of her feelings for certain ideals and people and places were awe-inspiring. And I think that I also enjoyed this book a lot because, as I said, I really like the protagonist, Winter, de Ballesteros, Countess of Los Aguilares. The evolution she goes through from the start to the end of the novel was really good, And regarding Alex Randall, definitely was not the sort of leading man that I was expecting. And it was really odd because even though I was disliking him at some points of the novel, I could understand why he was doing or saying some things or even thinking them, and that made me feel for him. And I think that he was a wonderful man to be alive in the 19th century because he treated Winter, for example, as an equal. He never shied away from telling her stuff about politics or war just because she was a woman and he was afraid she would faint or be unable to comprehend the importance of a matter. And as I said earlier as well, I really learned a lot reading Shadow of the Moon. Being an Anglophile and someone who loves the British monarchy, I was excited to read about this take on the Victorian era where English colonialists were living in India. And while I did learn a lot about this particular time in history and India's culture and society and its traditions, we also get to see the hard lives some of the English women living in India were going through, living in the 19th century colonies. And regarding the historical aspect of Shadow of the Moon, although I am not an expert in this particular bit of history, as a journalist, I think this novel was really well researched. I really like how we got to meet real-life historical figures at some dance or shooting Winter attended. But most of all, I love how MMK describes both points of view in this affair, that of the British colonialists and that of the people of India, and all that they had to endure, and the outcome of years of enduring being governed by foreign forces. So you have to read this novel with an open mind. Both of them do good and bad things. Still, I really enjoyed the fact that I learned about the first Afghan war and of the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857. I wasn't aware that before India became part of Queen Victoria's empire, it had been ruled by the British East India Company. I thought that they were just merchants living under the empire in India, but apparently they were ruling India before the British monarchy. And the transition of power from the British East India Company to the monarchy is due to the major rebellion of the people of India to their conquerors that took place for about a year around the whole country. And this is it. Hopefully I've made Shadow of the Moon justice and now you're desperate to read the book. Please let me know what you thought of it. I want to talk to you about anything regarding this precious novel. In the description box below you can find the link to its Goodreads page. Thank you very much for watching my book review of Shadow of the Moon by MMK. I'm Caro, the Mental Traveler. Take care.